Hello and welcome along to another Solidworks video. In this video I'm going to run through the modelling process for another part, the bracket 2 part. So the part, you can see the drawing for this part on the Moodle page. I think it's just called bracket 2. So what I'm going to do is just copy across this PDF. I'm going to take a snip. So Windows Shift and S, I'm just going to snip these dimensions and copy them into my Solidworks working area. So Control and V to paste that image in. Okay, so this is the part we're working on here. Have a look at the pictorial view of it here. So it's some kind of a casting, a bracket for presumably holding two shafts, one of diameter 28 or so and one of diameter 13. So the three views as given here, we have an elevation, a plan and an end view. So from the orientation here, I suppose the front elevation is here looking perpendicular to those two shafts, and the end view, or the right view, so looking at the right plane in SolidWorks, will be of this this view here, where you can see looking in at the holes. So I'm going to, I suppose, if we come up with a plan for how we're going to actually model this part here, what I will probably do is I'm going to sketch this view of it here on the right plane, this view of it here on the front plane, and this view on the top plane, obviously. If we just check the where features are dimensioned from, we notice here that the 133 millimeters to the height of the center of the 28 millimeter hole, 162 to the very top. These are all measured from the very bottom surface of the part. So what I think I will do is I think I'm going to approach this by modeling this base plate here, this oblong shape at the this kind of rectangular with rounded corners. I'll model that on the top plane and extrude that up, and then I'll do the rest of the features kind of afterwards. Okay, so I'm going to model this view first, then perhaps on the right plane I'll sketch the shapes seen in this view, and then maybe add this feature on the top here, this boss on the top. Okay, so I'm going to start with the top plane here, and I'll create a new sketch. I'll create a new extruded boss base feature, and I'm going to create this outline shape here. I think I'll leave the holes separately and I'll add them as a separate feature afterwards. So I want to create a center rectangle here. Doing so, creating a center rectangle here will mean the origin is at the center of the part. And it'll also mean then that the front plane and the right plane are going to run centrally through the part as well. So let's say if I dimension that 84 across, okay, and 70 this way. Okay, so that's the basic size of the thing laid out. What I will do, and maybe I should have done this before I dimensioned it really, but is I'm going to do those rounds on the corners using a sketch fillet command here. So I'm going to sketch these with a radius 18, and I'm going to round off these corners within the sketch. So when it gets extruded, those corners are going to be extruded with it, or those fillets rather. Okay, so that's the sketch fillet command done. My dimension is still okay, so the dimension is going to be between the flats essentially. Okay, so that is fully defined now. If I extrude that part up by a height of 11 here, height of 11. Wait for that to complete. Okay, so that's the basic shape of the base. If you see now, because I did that as a center rectangle, My top plane is at the bottom of that. My front plane is running through this way. My right plane is running like so. So those planes will be down along the centers of these webs here. So that'll make it easier for sketching. I can use the front plane and right plane for sketching. Now you don't have to do it that way. You could create your own planes if you wish. So if you had, say, your origin at the corner of the part, you could create a plane parallel to the right plane to do your sketching on if you wish. I think it's easier to set it up with the origin in the center of the part here. So those planes will be there. You can take advantage of symmetry, then you can mirror things about the planes and so on. So with my right plane here, I'm going to tackle this view next. So I'm going to create a sketch that includes these circles and also these circles here, and I can extrude out then in 2 or 3 separate features. I can extrude this slanted web, I can extrude these cylindrical features here and here, all from a single sketch. So I'm going to tackle that next. So if I create a new sketch on the right plane, and spacebar and look in normal 2, I'm going to create this basic shape here with these 2 circles and the diagonal lines. Okay. And I want to make those directly above the origin here. Make them vertical. And then I want to connect. I want to create a kind of a triangular shape, or I want a line coming across the bottom and then lines going up diagonally up. So I'll create a line across the bottom, coming up tangent to this circle here, and another line from this corner coming up tangent here. Okay, and the line across the bottom is important because we want that to be enclosing an area, a solid area around here. I'll need to trim away part of that circle as well, so I can use my power trim command. Now I have my shortcut wheel set up with 8 segments in it, and one of them being the power trim down here. But you will find that up here as well. So I'll just scribble till it crosses that segment of the line. You'll see now the way this is shaded here, I have a fully enclosed area because I drew that line across the bottom as well. Okay, so that's kind of the outline for part of that. Actually, excuse me, I didn't want to actually remove that because that is going to be extruded out as the cylinder. So I'll just undo that and leave that circle in there. Okay, so I want this circle down here as well. So if I draw another circle here, just at some random location, pair of circles concentric with each other. These are to be dimensioned 81 millimeters from this top circle and 14 out from the center, 14 out from the origin. So dimension, I want an aligned dimension between these, so not a vertical dimension here, but if you move your mouse around, you'll find here this is giving me an aligned sort of distance dimension between those, and I want that to be 81 millimeters. Okay, so what that aligned dimension does is that will act like a kind of a radius, so it'll always stay a certain distance away from that. I'll put in a few more dimensions on that. I want the overall height from the center of this to the bottom of the base down here, so let's say to the origin. Smart dimension from the center of that circle to the bottom there is 133. And the diameter of that circle is 46. Diameter of the inner circle is, I believe, 28.5 or thereabouts. 28.55. Okay. Now you could just extrude this as a solid cylinder and then cut that hole as a separate feature. Maybe it might make sense. Maybe using the hole wizard if it was something other than just a plain hole. I'm going to just do it this way within the sketch. It's probably the quickest way to do it, but as I said, if this is any kind of a non-standard hole, you might use the hole wizard for it. Okay, so the shape of that is coming together now. I want to dimension this 14 millimeters across from the 14 across from the origin, let's say. Okay. And the dimensions of those circles there are 29 and 13. Likewise, this smaller circle here, if this was anything other than a plain round hole, you would do it as a separate feature and maybe using the hole wizard. So 13 millimeters. Okay, and I think that is that sketch fully defined. So we have a good bit of stuff in this sketch. We're going to be able to use that to create the central web. We're going to be able to use it to create the cylindrical feature at the top with the hole in it, and the smaller cylindrical feature at the down low with the hole in it also. Okay, so I'm going to create the central web first here. Now what I want to do is I'll extrude that, but I'm going to extrude it in two directions simultaneously. So if I highlight sketch 2 here, go to my features and create an extrusion. I'm extruding it from the sketch plane, but rather than going blind by one direction, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use mid-plane extrusion. So what that will do is it'll extrude it in two directions simultaneously, and I can give it an overall thickness here of 8 millimeters, I think it is. And I need to select obviously which contours then I want to extrude. So this contour here, everything except the two cylindrical features. And you'll see there now that that's been extruded out symmetrically either side of the sketch plane. And it's going to have an overall thickness of 8 millimeters. So rather than going 4 in each direction, it's given it a single dimension of 8 millimeters centered on that plane. So that's that web feature there. I can create the cylindrical feature at the top here, so that's going to have, again, that's going to be mid-plane, and it's going to have a length of 34. So if I go back and expand this out here and select sketch 2 again, I'm going to create a separate extrusion from that. Again, from the sketch plane and extruding mid-plane, but this time by a length of 34 millimeters. I'm going to extrude this like so. Okay, and finally then this smaller cylindrical feature down here. Now if you look at the dimensions on this one, this is not symmetrical either side of either side of that right plane. What we have is it's gone 16 millimeters in one direction and 17 millimeters in the other direction. So I'm again going to select sketch 2 here. I'm going to create an extrusion, and I'm going to select that contour here in the center. Now this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude it a certain distance in direction 1, and I'm also going to extrude it a certain distance in direction 2. So direction 1, if we turn off direction 2 for a moment, direction 1 is this one here, 17 millimeters out in the positive x direction, let's say. 17 that way. And then I'll check the box for direction 2 here, and I want it to go 16 millimeters in direction 2. Like so. And that is that feature completed. Okay, so the overall part is starting to take shape now. We have more or less of all of this view created. What we don't have then is the other web in the other direction. So looking in at the front of the part, there's going to be a web coming down here and curving down to the bottom here. So this curve here with the radius 32 on it. Okay, so I'm going to create another sketch now, and I'm going to use the front plane, I think it is. So if we look at the front plane, that's running up through the middle of the part. Again, because we created the origin in the center of the part. If you didn't have the origin in the center of the part, as I said, you can always create another plane. So let's say if I highlight that front plane on my features here under reference geometry, I could create another plane parallel to that front plane if I needed to. So let's say if my front plane was along this face here, I could create a plane parallel to that front plane and have it line up with the midpoint of this face here, for example. But because of the way I started the sketch with the origin centered on it, I don't need to do that. Okay, so I'm going to create a sketch on that front plane. I'm looking normal too. Okay. So what I want here is, if we look in here, we have a line coming down. So from this cylindrical face up here, we have a line coming down, then going around an arc and coming down to the bottom surface here. The only dimension we have on that is a radius 32 on that there. But what you could infer from the drawing is that this line here is a tangent to the bottom of the face down here, and also that this curve is a tangent to that vertical line going up that way. There's a little bit of figuring out in this one, but if we rough it out, so we'll want a fully enclosed area. So what I'll do first of all is I'll have a line coming across, up this way, across, and back down. Then we'll put in a curve that's tangent to both of those lines. Okay, so I'll come across by a certain amount. I don't want a midpoint on it. I'll just come across by a certain amount and then down. And I'll just leave that floating there for the moment. Okay, so what I want now is I want to curve that with a radius of 32. That's a tangent to this line down here, and that's tangent to this line down here. So there's a couple of ways you could do that. You could put in a circle, make a tangent to both of those lines and then trim it. But I'm going to use the arc up here. So we have a few different ways of constructing an arc. If you know where the center point is, you can do it that way. Or if you have 3 points on the arc, you can do it that way. I'm going to use the tangent arc here. So I'm going to do a line, or an arc rather, starting from here. That's going to be tangent to this line and tangent to this line. So click on that and click on this one here. Okay. Now it has put in a tangency relation here, but it hasn't put in a tangent relation there. So I'm going to highlight both of these and make that a tangent. Okay. So you'll see now that's looking a little bit more like what we should have here. All we need now is a radius dimension on that. Oops. So depending on what the radius of that arc is there, you'll see that'll change the position of that web, that vertical web running down. Okay. So if I put in a dimension on that arc there, radius 32, you see the center point of the arc up here. That center point is going to be directly above this point here, and it's going to be directly across from this point here. Okay, and that is that completed. Now to do the other side, I could, let's say I'll go back into that sketch again, right click and go edit sketch. What I could do is I could mirror this sketch here within my within sketch 3 I could put a center line down here and mirror all those sketch entities across to the other side here. That's one way of doing it. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to just create that web on one side here, and then I'm going to mirror it across to the other side. So mirror the completed 3D feature rather than mirroring the sketch. But either one would be valid. So first I'm going to create that 3D feature. I'm going to create an extrusion from sketch 3. We want to do the same thing again. We want to go mid-plane. Now, I've done this way deliberately. I've made an error in the way I've done this, but I've done it on purpose. So, actually, we'll leave that wide for a moment. So if this was 20 millimeters mid-plane, so see what's happened here. Because I did my sketch just until it was touching the bottom of that cylindrical face there. If I go to extrude that out, I'm going to be left with a gap either side on that web. And in fact, if I try to create this extrusion, it won't actually create it because of the nature of the geometry that would be created down here, where this is just touching a single point. You'd be left with zero thickness geometry, it's called within the program there. So I'll try and create that, and I'll show you the error that it gives me. If I create that. No, so it says unable to create this feature because it would result in zero thickness geometry. And the problem there is with that intersection between the top of this extrusion and the cylindrical face up there. So I'm going to cancel that. I'll go back in and I'll modify the sketch a little bit. So what I want is I want the top of that sketch to be inside the cylinder somewhere. Okay. So if I go back in and edit sketch 3 again, and I look straight in at sketch 3 as well, so spacebar, normal 2. I want this line here at the top of sketch 3 to be up in here somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change my display style so that I can see hidden lines, and I'm going to move the top of sketch 3 up till it's touching the inside of that hole. Okay, so I need to remove some of these relations here. Probably this one at least. Okay, so that's moving one side of the line there. So I can move that up and make it coincident with the hole on the inside. I'll remove this. So just hitting delete on the keyboard there to remove that. And I'm going to drag that up and make it coincident with the inside of the hole up here. So that now is back fully defined again. Close out of my sketch. And we'll go back to the default display style here. So you can see the sketch there is going up now till it's just touching the inner surface of that hole there. Okay, so I'll take sketch 3 now and I'm going to extrude that out in 2 directions. So from the sketch plane, going mid-plane by 8 millimeters. You see now that's centered on the front plane, and the extrusion itself is extruding into that cylindrical feature. It's not actually going to protrude into the hole at all. Okay. So something like that. And I think that is more or less most of the part. I need to do the holes here, and I need to mirror that curved web. But we're more or less there now. So I'm going to create a mirror of boss extrude 3. So I could highlight boss extrude, or 6 rather. I could highlight boss extrude 6 here, click on mirror, and it needs a face or a plane to mirror about. So within here, what I'm going to do is mirror it about the right plane. Here. See the preview of it. It's going to mirror boss extrude 6 about the right plane, and okay, that's That's that done. Okay. The last thing then are these little holes. Well, the last, I suppose, feature to create are these little holes. There is a small matter then of all of the fillets. Now there's quite a lot of corners to fillet here, so we might I might do that in a separate video because we're coming up on 25 minutes now. So I'll just finish off the holes in this and then I'll do a separate video where I maybe do the fillets. Okay, so I'm going to, for the holes here, I'm going to use the hole wizard. So the type of hole, just an ISO. Here we go, just a plain hole here. Drill sizes, diameter 8. And the end condition is going to be through all. And that's it, I think. So the positions then, I'm going to sketch them on this face here. I'll look in normal 2 again. So somewhere there. And what I'll do is I'll just create one of them and then I'll mirror it, I think. Yeah, so I'm going to create a center line down through the front plane that way, and another center line this way, from midpoint to midpoint down here. Okay, and if I get one hole right, then I can mirror it and mirror it again. So that hole needs to be 29 millimeters out from, let's say from this midpoint here to here. That is 29. That way, and it's 23 this way. Okay, so that's the location of one hole. With one hole done, now what I can do is you can mirror things within a sketch as well. So I'm going to highlight that center mark of that hole. I'm going to mirror it. So the entity is to mirror at that point, or the center point of the hole, and I'm going to mirror it about that center line. You see it gets created over there. Okay. Now what I'll do is I'll do another mirror where I select both of those points, select mirror entities again, and it's going to take point 1 and point 14 and mirror them about this center line here. Or mirror them about this center line here, and you get them created over there. Okay. So I think that is mostly there. Sorry, we have one last feature here, this boss at the top with the threaded hole in it. So to create that one, if we see here, it's a diameter 17 cylinder, where the top of it is located 162 millimeters away from the very bottom surface of the part, and then it's got a threaded hole, an M8 by 1.25 threaded through it. So to create that, there's a couple of different ways you could do it. You could sketch it on the top face or top plane again, and extrude it then with an offset from the sketch plane. But I think what I'll do is I'll create another plane up here at the top. So I'm going to create a plane up at the top of the part that's located 162 millimeters away from the from our top plane. So in the Features tab, we want to create reference geometry. We want to create a new plane. What I'll do is I'll just highlight the top plane down here first, and then come over and click on plane. And what it'll do is it'll pick up that I want to create a plane that's parallel to the top plane. Let's say. So the first reference here is the top plane. We're going to we could create a plane that's parallel to it, or we could create a plane that's offset from that top plane. So if we select one here, we want to offset it by 162 millimeters from the top plane. It'll go in as parallel to the top plane and with a distance of 162 between them. Okay, so that has created a plane here, plane 1. I can do my sketch on this now and then extrude downwards from that plane until I hit the cylindrical surface of the top of the part there. Alright, so on plane 1 here I'm going to create an extrusion. I'm going to look in normal to my sketch and I want to sketch a circle, something like that, with a diameter 17. Okay, and that is fully defined. I'll close out of my sketch. Okay, so extrusion wise then, it's at the moment by default it's extruding from the sketch plane blind in the +y direction. I can change the direction of it so that it's extruding down into the part. But what I wanted to do, rather than going blind by a certain distance, in this case 14 millimeters, I wanted to go extrude downwards in the -y direction until it hits a surface, until it hits that cylindrical surface there. Okay, you can see if we look in at it from the side, it's extruding until it comes in contact with that surface and it's going to merge together. Okay, so that is the boss coming up out of the top of the part, and the last thing I want then is a threaded hole going down into that, so I'm going to use the hole wizard again. And we want an M8 by 1.25 threaded hole. So the type of hole here, the type tab, I'm going to go for a straight tapped hole, ISO, tapped hole, and the size would be M8. The standard M8 coarse thread would be M8 by 1.25. So M8 by 1.0 here would be a fine pitch. M8 here is the coarse pitch, 1.25 pitch. Okay, and the end condition then, so the end condition, if I set that to through all, it'll drill right the way down through the whole casting. So I wanted that to go up to surface again, and the surface I wanted to go up to is the inside of that hole there. Okay, I think that should be fine. So the options then, it's going to put a cosmetic thread around it, and it's going to put a thread call out, so this call out here, M8 by 1.25, that kind of thing. Yeah, and you can set what will be on that call out. So the call out value will give the 6.8 through hole M8 by 1.25. Okay, so that's the whole setup. For the positions then, it's just one position here on this top surface here, coincident there with that origin, or you could make it concentric with the cylinder right. Okay, and you see then that has created a hole all the way down until it comes in contact with that inner surface of the part. You see the cosmetic thread here on top as well, this second circle here. So the inner circle here would be diameter 6.8 and the outer circle here would be diameter 8. And that is the geometry all completed for that part. Now I think I might actually just carry on and finish it out with the fillets at the end. So as I said, there are quite a lot of corners and features in here and intersections between different features that need filleting. If you try to just throw everything into the one fillet command, you can get errors with the intersection of different fillets. So what I'll do is I'll maybe I'll fillet this in a couple of different passes. Okay, so I'll use the fillet tool here. First of all, so we want to set the radius of that to 3 millimeters, and the items to fillet here. So most of the internal corners here, let's say if I tackle this front web, this is one that may give you trouble, particularly the way this comes down to essentially 0 thickness down here, because this curve is tangent to the flat face down here. So I might treat this front web separately. It also has lots of intersections here with the cylindrical feature there. So we'll try that out and see what happens if you try to fillet this internal corner here. So there are 2 different ways this can be filleted essentially. Right, if you want to see down at the fillet options down at the bottom here, there's a couple of different ways that can be filleted. So I'll just do it this way first, the default way. If I OK that, you see what's happened here is it keeps the outside edge of the fillet as a straight line, and it widens out the feature there to match. It's kind of fishtailed out. Or alternatively, if I go back into that fillet tool again, there's the other option there to keep edge. So what it does is it keeps that 8 millimeter web, 8 millimeters all along, and it tapers the fillet in to meet it at that corner there. So there's different options on that. I will do it that way, I think. So keeping the 8 millimeter distance and tapering the fillet in to match it. Okay, I'll go back in and I'll do another fillet. Again, leave that on default there. And I'm going to then fillet, say, the internal corners that meet that front web. So this little corner in here, and here, and maybe these ones here as well. Okay, so those are all the internal corners that intersect with that front web done, I think. So I'll locate that one. Okay, so there are already 3 fillets. There will be a fillet on this guy up here as well. I think those are all the internal fillets on that side. Now, there would be the exact same on this side over here as well. Okay, so all of these faces in here. You could do them separately, or you may be able to mirror those. So we could try mirror fillet one here about the, is that the right plane? Yeah, so we could mirror that about the right plane. And perhaps we could mirror fillet 2 as well. We'll try that and see if that works. No, so it's thrown up some kind of an error there. So you might just go and create a separate mirror feature and do that again. Just try doing it fillet 1 on its own and see if we can mirror that about the right plane. No. Okay. Yeah, so go ahead and do those manually. I'm not going to do that now in the video. I'll leave that as an exercise for yourselves. But you should get the idea. I did miss out a couple of features here. So I'll do another little fillet in here. Again, radius 3. This feature here, or this edge, and oops, this edge in here. Just that edge and this edge as well. That edge. Okay. So a little bit of patience, and I would advise splitting them up into multiple different features. So if you try and put everything into one fillet feature here, you may run into problems where certain things intersect with each other. So say where this fillet here might intersect with this fillet coming up, you might get some problems. Okay, that is the internal fillets. The other thing then are the rounds, the external fillets. So if I create another fillet feature here, and the items to fillet, now if I pick an external corner, it'll put that in as a round here. So every edge that is connected in a straight line to this edge here, like that. And again, I would say put these into a few different features. So I'm going to do, let's say, all these external ones in this loop, like so. And then I'll create a separate feature here. I'll do the ones on the middle web now, for example. So this edge here, and this edge here, and this edge here. Okay, so rounding over all those corners. Okay, so I think that's the idea for that side, and you would have then the same thing over on this side as well. So do all the internal corners first and then round over the external corners afterwards. Okay, these cylindrical faces I think remain flat. So this whole part would be a casting, for example, and then those faces are probably machined flat afterwards. Actually, I've missed these internal corners here as well. Do a fillet on those as well. Radius 3 again, all around there like that. Now, I probably should have done that before I rounded over this external. Before I rounded this external corner here. So what I might see if I can do is that was fillet 5 here. I'll see if I can bring fillet 7 back in time to before fillet 5 was created. Okay. That then affects the order in which those fillets were created. So fillet 7 was created, and then fillet 5 was created, and then fillet 6. Something like that. So you can change around the order in which these things were created if you want one fillet to have been done first and then another one applied on top of that kind of thing. But that I think is most of the fillets created there. You would repeat the process then for the opposite side. In some cases you may be able to mirror them across, but some places where you have complex geometry, maybe the mirroring tool is not quite able to rebuild the fillets in that case. Okay, so I'll pause the recording there, or I'll stop the recording at that.